Well, hello everyone and welcome to this special live event brought to you by the B1M in partnership with Bluebeam. I'm Fred Mills from the B1M and I'm smiling because today I am hosting building the world's tallest tree-covered skyscraper, and that reason alone is enough to get me leaping out of bed at 7 a.m. on a Thursday morning here in London. I'm very excited to talk to you. I think growing up as a kid doing sketches of cool buildings in my bedroom, building stuff with Lego, I could not have imagined that we'd ever be building something as cool and exciting as this. And this morning, we're going to be talking to you with the actual people, the actual real project team working on this, which is an extraordinary bit of access. It's going to be a really exciting chat. We've got people from Beulah, UN Studio, AECOM, Bluebeam. As you can probably tell, a rather overly enthusiastic host, but I've got to try and remember that I'm hosting an event here and not get carried away with my excitement of the building. Bit of housekeeping, first of all. This event's going to run for just an hour. I'd love to talk about this for 3 days, but I've been told to keep it to an hour, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to give a bit of context on this building first, in case you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard of the South Bank by Beulah Tower. We're then going to hear from the panel. We've got some pre-prepared questions that we're going to ask the panel so that you guys get some really good in-depth information on this project. And then we want to hear from you guys. We want to answer as many of your questions as we possibly can. So please get them coming into the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll get them answered by the experts we've got on the call here today. There's 2 features on Zoom. There's the Q&A section and there's the chat section. You want to put your stuff in the Q&A section, not the chat section, because otherwise it won't really get answered. So throughout, if anything comes up, think of anything, stick it in the Q&A and we'll get it answered. So without further ado, let's meet the awesome expert team that are building this project today, who are joining us for this special live event. There we go. Good start. We've worked out how to move slides. As I said, I'm Fred from the B1M, and today I'm joined by Luke from Beulah. Luke, can you give us a bit of background about your role and where you're coming from on this?
Thanks, Fred. I'm the Senior Development Manager at Beulah. I've worked across all of the projects that we've worked on, and I've been lucky enough to be on the project team driving this particular project from the very beginning.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us, Luke. Sandy, you're joining us from UN Studio?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm Sander. I'm an Associate Director at the UN Studio office in Melbourne. And as architects, I'm responsible, I guess, for safeguarding the design, but also seeing where it's flexible, where not, to get that from the competition design to realization.
Awesome, no small feat. Talking about getting design from design to realization, we've got the AECOM team with us today as well. Cool.
Hi, so my name is Michael Nielsen. I'm a Principal Structural Engineer in the Buildings and Places team at AECOM, based in the Melbourne office. My role in the project's being Design Manager for the project, across both the towers, the podium floors, the basement, the whole works. So yeah, really excited to speak to you all about this landmark project today.
Awesome. We've also got Julian with us as well. How you doing, Julian?
Good, and hello to everyone. I'm a structural engineer working for AECOM. My responsibility on this project was as the structural lead across the towers. So really driving a lot of the key design decisions during the development of design with the wider team.
Awesome. We've also got Shanak joining us from Bluebeam. How you doing, Shanak?
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. So Shannon Halliday, Technical Sales Engineer for Bluebeam in the APAC area. It's great seeing this. I'm from Melbourne and I've had the privilege of working with Michael and the guys, Julian as well. So yeah, bit of a privilege. This is great to see this. So thanks a lot. Thanks for having me along.
No problem. Well, thanks to you guys for being here. I should say that everyone else that's with us today, apart from myself, is joining us from Melbourne. I'm joining you today from London. So the magic of Zoom and the internet are all on the same event together, which is in itself awesome. Now, a bit of context for you. The video, The World's Tallest Tree-Covered Skyscraper, has just been published on YouTube yesterday. Already some great excitement around that. Obviously, I'm horrendously biased, but I think it's a great video. It's probably the most detailed, comprehensive video on this project anywhere to date. We've got model imagery, detailed analysis of how the engineering's happening, the backstory about how the project came about. obviously the narration itself is excellent as well. Some really good interviews in there from people you're going to recognise on this call. But honestly, do go and watch it. It's a really good, I think, pretty unbiased, straightforward overview of what is going to be, I think, the landmark project in Australia this decade. So do go and have a look at that. Shameless plug over for my own YouTube video. Now, a bit of background for this project, for those of you who haven't had a chance to watch the video yet or aren't aware of the South Bank by Beulah scheme. I'm going to keep this reasonably high level because I don't want to steal the thunder of the experts we're going to talk to in just a moment. / I don't really know what I'm talking about, and they know a lot more than me. So that's just my excuse to kind of keep things light and keep things simple. So for those of you not familiar with Melbourne, this is the South Bank area, which funnily enough is on the south bank of the river through the city. And that site you can see highlighted in pink there is the where the South Bank by Beulah development is rising from. Actually a relatively small site for this development, but I think it shows the kind of ingenuity that engineers have in maximising space on these development sites in city centres. Now, the project was chosen through an international design competition, which saw all kinds of incredible skyscrapers put forward by some big named architects, international kind of star architects, paired with local architects and designers in Australia as well. So everything from Bjarke Ingels, OMA, MVRDV, MAD, UN Studio, you name it, the big names were all there. I remember this competition being announced. It did make headline news. It was on the front of the papers here in the UK, you know, some 10,000 miles away, and right across the US and Europe as well. So this was a really big deal. I also remember, for those of us working in the kind of architecture and construction press, when you get 6 amazing buildings announced on one day with loads of cool renders, it was like a field day. We've never had such easy coverage in our lives. The stories and the social media posts wrote themselves, which was great. From that competition, Green Spine by UN Studio and Cox Architecture was selected, and you can see it's an instantly eye-catching and impressive building. I think it's one of those structures that it feels very realistic and achievable as compared to some of the other designs maybe put forward, but in a way that's also kind of inspiring and cutting edge and not really seen before. I think anyone could dispute we've seen anything like this before anywhere in the world. So really awesome, eye-catching and inspiring design, which I'm going to let Sander talk about in a bit more detail in just a moment. Now, a big part of this design concept, I think a big part of Beulah's selection for it, was the biophilic architecture elements. So I'll let Sander talk more about that in a moment, but when we say biophilic architecture, we mean the link between nature and the built environment, and the benefits and pros and cons of bringing those two together. You can see this is the podium area of the South Bank by Beulah developments. Lots of green space, lots of plants brought in. The public realm really well thought about. On that podium space, you might not be aware, but you can't just bring skyscrapers down to the ground and have a very cold glass entrance. You need to, I believe you need to integrate it very carefully into the streetscape, and that's exactly what this building does. So as these skyscrapers come down and connect to street level, there's what's, in my opinion, a really well thought out public realm and podium space, which includes retail, entertainment, all sorts of cultural attractions, and some very well out, stepped out design that really takes it from street up into skyscraper. Again, I'll let Sander talk all about that in just a moment. These renders, I think, speak for themselves. As I said, the title of this event is Tree Covered Skyscraper, so you might not be surprised that there are lots of plants and trees across this building. Some really incredible design here, which I think it makes that connection to nature for people throughout the development. This will be the tallest building in Australia as well, so by quite some way. I think those of you who've watched the B1M for a few years will know there's been a lot of debate in the past over what constitutes the technical official height of a skyscraper, and there is some debate between Q1 on the Gold Coast and Australia 108 just across the road from South Bank by Beulah. But South Bank by Beulah does, as you can see from this graph, win it by some considerable margin, rather smashes it by some considerable margin, which is very cool. Now, the really interesting part of this for me is making it happen. So going from what feels like an incredibly inspiring and uplifting design to that actual building existing. And the work that AECOM are doing and others to make this a reality is pretty astonishing. They've adopted a real computational approach to help translate UN Studio and Cox Architecture's design into engineering reality. Part of that as well is Bluebeam's really played a role. So there is that computational approach and model that I just described that the kind of the engineering geeks are working on. No offense to Michael and Julian, but that the kind of the hardcore of the team are working on needs to be accessible and understandable by everyone, from Beulah to trade contractors to different parts of the team being on board. And Bluebeam's intuitive tools really enable that to happen. They enable people to connect, gain access to the information through any device with almost any level of ability. So the Bluebeam's tools played a huge role in taking that computational approach and making it visible and accessible to everyone on the team who needs to see it. Now, as I said, we are kind of at the limits of my expertise on the engineering and design of this building. So I'm very grateful to bring back our expert panel who know a lot more than me. And we're going to talk to them now in some more detail. As I said, don't forget to keep your questions coming in as well. We want to hear from you guys, and we're going to answer as many of your questions as we can. So get them coming into the Q&A feature, not the chat feature, otherwise you'd be in deep trouble. So getting back to our panel, let's meet them in a bit more detail now and chat to them. Going back to the beginning and trying to really understand how this project came about, Luke, what made Beulah approach this through a public design competition, a very visible public design competition? I mean, surely it's easier to design these things yourself, get happy with it, and then present it to the world.
It is in some circumstances, but it all goes back to the location. The location for this project is the largest landholding in the central city area in Melbourne. And it has some incredible attributes that it's just a short walk without having to cross the road to the central business district, the central shopping district, the Royal Botanic Gardens, the world famous sporting district in Melbourne, the arts and cultural precinct, the entertainment precinct. And so a location, the other attribute of this location is that it's really embraced world-class tower architecture. And so due to these great attributes, we had a vision to redefine how the built environment responds to how Melburnians and how visitors live, work, stay and play and interact. And so it really felt like a natural progression to open this to the public and to invite their input to make this a really engaging shared experience. So we knew that such an ambitious vision had the potential to change the skyline and the cultural fabric of Melbourne, and also have a really major impact on the local community, the city of Melbourne, and actually the global architecture community. So we felt that it deserved to, that community to be an intrinsic part of the process in developing and selecting the world's best possible design for this location. So we took the approach of a highly visible and transparent architecture competition as a way of creating a platform for a conversation with the public and with government and the building design industry about the future of urban design and skyscrapers in our city and in the world. And so we thought the architecture competition was the way to go, but we wanted to take that one step further. We didn't just want to be transparent. We actually wanted to thoroughly document and open up the process to the global public. And so we embarked on a process. We started with the Australian Institute of Architects and engaged with them to ensure that the competition was run to the highest possible standards. We then sent a film crew around the world to actually document all of the different architectural firms in their home studios. And then we produced a series of films, which we actually we published on YouTube. We then flew all of the principals of all of the architecture firms to Melbourne for a mid-competition review. And while they were here, we then engaged with the University of Melbourne School of Design and held forums and presentations, it was an absolute thrill for the students to actually meet legends of the architectural world themselves. Then, at the conclusion of the design competition process, we built this incredible pavilion on the banks of the Yarra River in the heart of the city to hold the final jury presentations in a highly public, visible location. And then the day after those final jury presentations, we removed the curtains, and for a period of about 3 weeks, we displayed all of the scale models from all of the entrants. And the team from Beulah spent mornings and evenings and lunchtimes actually down on the steps of the pavilion, meeting with the public and talking to them about their feelings. And then last of all, we created a Future City Symposium, and we sold over 1,200 tickets to people from all around Australia to actually come and see the presentations from the architects themselves in their own words in an immersive multimedia theatre, which we actually built for the event. And so with those leading industry minds contributing to the process, and with such strong support from the public, it made having the eyes of the world on us just a really exciting opportunity to elevate Melbourne to the global stage and to celebrate Melbourne's status as one of the world's most livable cities, and to put us on a platform to innovate the tourism, corporate, and the cultural landscape of Melbourne.
Definitely, it sounds like a fantastic way to engage the public and citizens in a piece of architecture that's going to shape their city for the future. So to hear you talk about that, it's almost like we should be doing that with every major development that we embark on. I mean, I remember falling in love with all of them. I thought they were all great. How on earth did you pick one, and what made you choose? I'm sorry to ask you this. What made you choose Greenspine over the others?
So we actually assembled a jury to make the hard decision on the best design. We put together a jury which involved esteemed architects, members of the architecture media, representatives from University of Melbourne, and there was also representatives from Beulah on that, but certainly a minority seat at the table. And we also administered that jury process with the former Chief Operating Officer of the Australian Institute of Architects to make sure that it was properly run. So really, I can only speak for the views of the jury, and which we completely support. And some of the things that they absolutely loved about the UN Studio and Cox design was how the architecture really responded to its location really intimately. So the green spine, the landscaped facades of the building are not only an instantly recognizable icon of the building, but they speak to the tradition in Melbourne. Melbourne has always been known as the garden city within Australia. And it also speaks to the connection, the green connection from the Royal Botanic Gardens to the Melbourne Central Business District. And so there's this incredible green boulevard which we sit on, called South Bank Boulevard, and the green spine draws from that boulevard and actually draws the landscaping up and around the towers. They also loved the curve and the ability for different users to have different view lines and aspects from different levels of the building, being a really unique architectural attribute. Other aspects that they loved was the implementation of urban design and community integration throughout the building. And there's aspects of the design which still haven't been, revealed to the public yet. But things like pocket parks, community gardens within the residential tower that create local neighbourhoods for people who, like if you were to live in a suburban context, you could go to the park at the end of your street. And so part of what was really intrinsic about the design was to create that urban community and in a vertical village context. So that was really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sander, how did this vertical garden concept come about? At what stage in the design did that kind of trigger for you guys? And what was the inspiration for it? Was there a particular element of the brief you were trying to address with that?
Well, at the beginning of that, I should kind of mention that crazy competition, which definitely has not been surpassed by any at the moment. So still kind of hats off to Beulah on that. it's really that collaboration that we started with our now friends at Cox, kind of brainstorming about architecture suitable for Melbourne, but also in that part of the city. So it's part of like how we approach the massing. Of course, it's also really part of that icon of splitting the volume instead of having one extrusion. And with the two towers, suddenly you get the opportunity to react to your surroundings. But as Luke already touched on, is that if a city has been crowned 7 times the most livable city in the world, but has lost that position, that's something that people are concerned about, and kind of looking at what's going on everywhere. It's something that we also care very much about. So it's making sure that you can say that kind of being part of Victoria as the Garden State, we can add that as architecture that ties all the different program components together, because this mixed use building is like no other. There's every bit of program is in there. So what ties everything together is that those people have a connection to the green on every level. A little peak of view, being able to go outside at the podium levels. It's not really an architectural shape per se that connects them, but it's a connection to green that is the connecting factor. And that, as Luke said, kind of tying that down to the city aspirations of the greening South Bank Boulevard, really almost made very kind of almost no-brainer steps. So yes, of course, every component has to have connection to green. Why not? Why haven't we been doing that before? And Beulah asked for a kind of X ingredient, which everybody was extremely concerned about. Like, what is that X ingredient? We have no idea. We have to brain, and basically this is that ingredient that ties everything together, and you can keep on developing it on all the different levels. Is different. So I think that was the most confusing part of the brief, but in the end, also basically that became what the concept is about.
I mean, most of us will think about or know of Stefano Boeri's Bosco Verticale in Milan, which is kind of probably the biggest, most notable existing tree-covered building today. It's never really been done on the scale that's happening at South Bank by Beulah before. I mean, were you aware of that when you were kind of coming up with the design concept?
No, I guess that it's a concept. We just go for it, and then we'll try to make this a reality. I think that's what makes it so great. If you have a concept that you can keep from beginning to the end, there'll be small adjustments, and it will kind of grow and develop. But in fact, that kind of concept will make sure that it survives the 365 meters tower. Absolutely.
I mean, that's the perfect segue into making the design a reality. I mean, coming on to that, Julian, how do you kind of approach something like this? I mean, it's the tallest building ever built in Australia. There's twisting elements. There's 5.5 kilometers of planting. I mean, I'm imagining this is probably one of the biggest engineering challenges that you've faced.
Definitely challenging. That's one way to put it. And there's quite a few of them, I guess, from a structural perspective. And I guess trying to think about the way to answer that question, we've looked at it generally by breaking down each of the design challenges and addressing them one by one, whilst integrating the fundamental principles of structural engineering throughout, and then putting it all together. So it's really been a collaborative process with Beulah, UNS, and Cox Architects, as well as the wider design consultant team. There are a few design challenges, and 3, there's many, but 3 do come to mind that I'll just talk briefly about. I guess one of the main highlights is the East Tower itself. It's quite a tall and slender tower, giving credit to the form and architecture, especially when looking at the South Bank and Melbourne CBD areas. And what we sort of mean by slenderness from a structures perspective is that we typically look at the total height in consideration of its footprint or envelope, especially its minimum width. So with this, we really had to pay attention to the tower's lateral stability system, supporting the tower in the event of lateral loading, say wind. Another challenge you can see as the renders is that the geometry of the tower is quite unique. So with the renders that were on the screen previously, with the tower twist, you'll notice that the entire northwest portion of the east tower, for example, actually undergoes transition. So we have to give careful consideration about how the structure, in this case, the columns actually transition throughout that twist and make its way down to foundation. The last one I'll just talk about is just the amount of greenery, as Sandra was mentioning. We've got greenery at least 2 faces per tower, a series of pocket parks, as Luke was mentioning, as well as some other features elsewhere throughout the tower. There's a lot of green there, and with a lot of green comes weight, if you've ever had the pleasure of gardening. So I guess for all these design challenges, I like to work through them in terms of thinking about going back to the fundamentals of structural design, and particularly in terms of load path, and how those individual structural systems comprising the tower sort of work together to support it. And I guess in the shoes of a viewer who's probably not a structural engineer, I like to think of it as first asking the question, well, what loads are actually being applied to the tower? So in this case, we have governing methods of gravity and wind, governing loads. And then we define the structural systems to support that loading. We then go through designing each and every one of those structural elements accordingly. So just as an example, think about your body, and we're all subject to the laws of gravity. Think about if you're at one of the top apartments. How is your weight, your furniture, how is it all supported? In this case, that weight is being supported by a concrete floor spanning between columns, which we call the horizontal structural system. Those columns then transmit that loading all the way down to the foundations, which we define as the vertical structural system. And then it goes from the foundation, it disperses out through the founding material. Another one, and it's probably the obvious question, is how do we support the tower in the event of, say, wind loading, extreme wind loading? And in this case, it's our lateral stability system coming to effect. And what we've done here in our structural design is to try and engage the entire footprint of the structure into resisting the wind loads, consisting of the central core, the shear walls, the belt walls, as well as the columns themselves, and ultimately transmitting those loads down to the foundations below. The last thing I'll just touch on is just for structures, not only are we sort of designing everything for safety to make sure the tower stands up and it's nice and robust, but we also got to think about its in-use case, what we call its service condition. Every tower, it doesn't matter how tall or how short it is, it all moves to some degree. But what we have to consider is that when it does move, it does so in a way that not only is it safe, but it's really comfortable to the occupants of the inhabitants. So imagine yourself having a glass of wine at the topmost floors, one of the topmost floors, or even having a bowl of soup. We're designing the structure in such a way, not only that we're controlling or limiting the magnitude of the maximum movement to a defined degree, but also ensuring that the movement occurs such that you don't even notice it, you can't perceive it. And that's all got to do with accelerations. I won't go into it too much longer. I'm sure we could talk a lot longer about this, but that's sort of the general philosophy we've applied throughout with regard to the challenges.
Definitely, I think that's incredibly useful and insightful. I think, watching the video, but also talking to you during the pre-production process, what I'm struck by is that South Bank by Beulah is a very unique, impressive building. It's kind of cutting edge in its architectural appearance, but a lot of the engineering principles and the engineering strategy are the same and common to all skyscrapers, and the state-of-the-art approach is one that is common to skyscrapers around the world. So there's nothing that this building's dealing with or designed with that's different to any other skyscraper in that regard. It's the form and the look is what's eye-catching, but the engineering principles behind it are well established and used around the world, which is something that really struck me when you think it's going to be quite different, but actually it's very similar to other buildings and engineering principles worldwide. I'm interested, what kind of digital construction workflows have helped you overcome those challenges? How's digital construction and digital collaboration really played a role in this project? I'm kind of asking that to Michael, Julian, and Sandra all together, if that's cool. I think you might be on mute, Michael, but you're back off now. There you go.
Back off. I might jump in there. So I guess given the complexity of the project and the geometry of the project, with the twisting facade and the stepping columns, we've used computational design techniques to enable the relational process. So this is really done by building the geometry in a central location through an iterative process. And that just allows us to adjust parameters one by one. For example, we can adjust the column size, we can adjust the wall thickness, we can adjust the concrete strengths, for example, and then we update these in our analysis models. So this allows us to test a quantum of scenarios and options. So I guess testing all these options wouldn't have been possible without the technology and using the parametric modeling design techniques. So it's been a really invaluable tool for us throughout the whole duration of this design.
I mean, Sandra, how have you found that from the architectural side? What kind of digital workflows you've been employing?
Well, I guess that's especially apparent when you look at how we could maintain the exterior shell in place and have the AECOM team do these iterations. It's that back and forth in cutting the slabs and seeing what the results are of their studies, kind of seeing how we can make immediately, how we can make the translations between apartment shapes and everything, and do this type of exchanges much faster than we would have done without these quick exchange setups in place. Because you're talking about hundreds of floors, and we want to kind of be able to test not just one as a benchmark, but be able to go through series of it. And then especially also kind of having then the possibility to see floors after floor very quickly. You see those levels jump, and you kind of slowly see those kind of column sizes change. And then for everybody to realize, okay, this direction is a good one, or this suddenly makes an apartment level less efficient. So only with that kind of quick turnaround can you do this for this type of towers. Otherwise, it would be an impossible job, and you would maybe only have to go with the first setup, because there wouldn't be any time for it.
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke earlier about how Bluebeam as a digital collaboration tool is really helping democratize access to information for the whole project team, whoever they may be, whatever their role may be. I'm interested, is that something you guys were using before the pandemic, before the work from home orders, or was it something that you kind of had to embrace out of necessity when the pandemic hit?
I might jump in there. So personally, I've been using the Bluebeam software for quite a few years. But I guess through the last few years, when we've been in lockdown in Melbourne particularly, it's really sort of helped us unpack the true power of the software. So we use it to collaborate with our colleagues, using Bluebeam sets to mark up drawings in a live environment. And that's sort of really been a game changer for us, particularly on a project of this nature when it's quite dynamic. We're testing lots of options. There's quite a large design team working on the project. So it's allowed us to really work and collaborate in that live environment. And we've just found a lot of efficiencies using the Bluebeam software in that way.
I guess also to add to that, a lot of the design was conducted during the pandemic. So we quickly had to transition to a work from home and digital workflow. And what that sort of meant for us was, in typical practice, when we're working through a problem, I'd just call Michael up to a big desk in the office, and we'd get some pens and papers out and start sketching things. So transitioning to the digital world, and Bluebeam has been really helpful with that, because a lot of those tried and tested methods we can actually transition to that workspace. I really like drawing stuff when I'm trying to figure out problems, and Bluebeam's got all sorts of tools you can use, and also used a lot of the hand sketching with the tablet as well. So it's pretty handy. Absolutely.
I mean, I understand as well that Melbourne's recently just coming out of its most recent lockdown, so I'm pleased to hear that. And it's great to see so many of you with nice haircuts, nice fresh haircuts today. So it's good to see. I mean, Shannon, there's there's lots of talk, you know, as cities kind of around the world are kind of bouncing back from the pandemic a bit now. Lots of different governments are using the phrase "build back better." We've heard that quite a bit in the lead up to COP26 and stuff. Schemes like this are only going to get more common as we kind of build the future. What role do you see for platforms like Bluebeam on these types of projects in the years and decades ahead?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So as the guys are saying, like some of our clients have been using studio sessions for some time, which is that cloud opportunity to collaborate and communicate with others. And well, the pandemic has forced technology to push ourselves that we have to work from home and collaborate in that sense. So it's been great for a lot of our clients because the review already has that tool inside there. Where I see it moving forward is a bit more of an understanding of our software and people incorporating like a digital execution plan where there might be collaboration done with studio sessions. And that sort of ties into the ISO 19650, where we want to see responsibility on these big projects, who's doing what, when did they say it, and just really good quality information. And that's built into Bluebeam studio sessions already. So I can see that really jumping on part of their internal mandates, whether just like Julian was saying, communication with Michael there, or working with other consultants, whether it be, you know, locked down at home or interstate or even globally.
Definitely. Now, guys, we're going to come on to you and get through as many of your questions as we can. We've got loads of questions, but we're going to get through as many as we can as quickly as we can. First one is asking, how much focus are the developers and designers putting on the use of environmentally friendly, low carbon emission materials in the project? And I guess what kind of focus is there on sustainable building design? I'm going to ask that to kind of Luke and Sander, if that's cool. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Sustainable design and the use of sustainable materials is an extremely high priority for us. It's something that we're focused on in every aspect of what we do. And it's something that we're continuing to evolve as the materials and the supply chains are also evolving. We're looking at every aspect of the building and how we can implement sustainable design, systems and materials.
Kind of adding to that, it's also for us really looking for those alternatives that are there in materials that are more low carbon, that are local, that are easy to exchange later on. Those are kind of things that maybe people would not have realized before, that just kind of import any material. But like what the pandemic has shown us, that one little error in your supply chain makes you suddenly very vulnerable. So the sustainability is also a very sensible and logical choice to see what you can do here in Australia to get this done, and that helps immensely. So.
Absolutely. Another question coming in from Arthur, and I like this one. This is a question for you in studio. When you were first designing the skyscraper concept, did you initially have a clear idea in mind, or did you redesign the skyscraper many times over?
Well, during that competition process, it was done many times over. That's how it kind of goes. If you visit the office in Amsterdam, you can see kind of a series of like a series of models where slowly those shapes got there. They started very like all over the place, but very quickly they were split. I think that was a thing that was good, but in the beginning they were growing together and they were growing apart. They were much more faceted. They were kind of almost like rocks that slowly started to evolve. And then we thought, like, we're doing too much here. We have to kind of layer it down. So then they got more calm, and slowly they kind of, okay, then they also land like in the picture that it's good to have that in the back of you there. Look, that kind of, it shows the South Bank skyline, kind of toning it down and then keeping only that one twisting element made very much sense. So no, there is, in any design, we go through 20 iterations, throw 19 away, take the 20th, maybe throw it away in the end as well, and really kind of slowly kind of let it evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess knowing that you're going to have to present your design alongside Bjarke Ingels, OMA, MVRDV it adds the pressure.
Definitely, that was a kind of a group that was everybody's kind of what are the others going to do?
Yeah.
Right? That's the big question you always ask yourself at the beginning of a competition. And well, maybe you shouldn't care about what the others are doing and just go for it. But
good advice for any architects. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Now, another question. Again, you might not. Sorry, Sandra, we're picking you. This is the last question I'll ask you, I promise. You might not know the answer to this one yet, but what species of plants are being used in the project, and what percentage, if you know yet, are likely to be native to Australia?
I couldn't give you the specific names and species yet, but so we are looking through basically the building is almost like different climate zones, right? So it's dry and windy in the top, and it's more protected at the base. So having those different types and different plants that actually could adapt and are local to these climate zones is what we're looking for. So it's not just you put the one tree or shrub all the way over, but the building has been defined like slowly changing plant types on that to be really, and having them local, like local Melbourne plants that can be surviving the windy conditions, that can go from the forest season in one day plant, as you say, as you will, that kind of is also, again, very, very sensible choice to have that on the tower facade.
Definitely. I mean, a question for Luke here, and again, Luke, you might not know the answers to this just yet, but somebody's asking, do you know how many apartments are going to be constructed in the towers? And do you know what the retail space is going to kind of look and feel like at this stage?
So there's over 800 apartments, and they're mixed in different levels and different categories of apartments all the way up the tower. And they range from 1 bedroom, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 6 bedroom, and some mega penthouses as well. The retail space in the podium is going to be a mixture of larger and smaller retail stores. It's too far away now to actually define exactly what those stores are, but we're going through an iterative process at the moment to actually design what that internal layout of the retail is. One thing I can say about it though is that we've already started partnering with retailers to explore what the future of the retail experience is. I think the experience that we've all had over the last few years has really changed our relationship to consumerism and to the retail experience. And so we're looking at a style of retail which bridges the gap, or it's at the intersection of online and bricks and mortar. And so we're very much, we're looking into different ways that people can experience retail to bring them back into stores and to generate value in that retail experience.
Absolutely. Another question we've had in, this is for Michael and Julian this time, and again, I think you guys may have a handle on this now. Do you expect the kind of superstructure of the building to be concrete, steel, timber, or a hybrid?
So predominantly concrete with the stability elements. So the structural core and the outrigger system, the floors, the columns will predominantly be reinforced concrete. There'll be post-tensioning steel and reinforced steel in the floors. There'll also be some secondary steel work around some of the podium floors. But an interesting thing, there's an auditorium proposed as well, and that's, there's a 45-metre span in there. So we're looking at options for steel trusses as well, some really large, long spanning steel trusses. And there also is an opportunity in the podium floors to look at alternative materials such as timber or hybrid systems. So that's a great opportunity for the project, and also sort of is in keeping with the sustainable strategy as well, to try and look at different material options and low carbon options as well. So there'll be a wide range of materials used.
Another interesting question. This is for the perspective of people who may want to live there. Will they have a chance to add their own plants, choose which plants they have on the balcony, prune them, tweak them themselves?
I can touch on this. So the green spine itself isn't incorporated into the private space of the apartments. It actually sits, it's a facade element of the building. And so we'll have a team of a landscape team that will curate and maintain the green spine. And so it'll be for the benefit of everybody in all the buildings and all of Melbourne. That'll be a design and a curation and a maintenance process which will be centrally controlled by that precinct landscape team.
A really great question here to come in. Other than promoting social value, what other functional benefits does having that level of greenery provide in such a tall building in terms of shading, air quality, kind of carbon neutral impacts? I'll ask that question to Sander. Are there other benefits of incorporating trees and plants?
I think the main one, as you mentioned, is the appreciation of your environment when you're in it. So that's the direct control. But next to that, of course, the adding of a different typology of facade also makes an interesting mix into the city itself. So that you don't have architecture that is just one uniform extrusion, as you are kind of having something change and react, and also react on seasons, is something that kind of adds another layer to that architecture. Of course, plants have a good impact on the environment overall. So we do expect that it will be kind of a positive attributes to that. But it's primarily kind of for the people that see it, how it behaves in the city, and how it kind of filters the views and frames that where the green spine is showing its best.
Absolutely. One question we've had from Graham: is there a plan to collect and treat water on the site as sort of like a grey water, rainwater harvesting system, and use that within the building? So, might be a bit early for that question.
That's absolutely central to our water management system. So all of the rainwater that lands on the building will either go directly into the plants that it lands on, and if it lands on any other part of the building, it will be collected and treated. And then on top of that, we'll be collecting and purifying the grey water in the building and reusing that for irrigation and other non-human contact uses within the building.
Fantastic. Well, guys, we've got a lot of questions coming in. We've got 55 questions now, so we might have to. We will endeavour to get back to you guys on email afterwards if we're not able to answer them here. Also, shout out to Rory in the chat, who's said if you ever need a surveyor for your gardens, hit me up, and then put his email address. Which you've got to admire the the savviness. So I appreciate that. Shout out to Rory just for that basis. Now, guys, before we wrap up, I want to ask you. This is an extraordinary project. The eyes of the world are on it, as we said in the video, that this is subject to international media attention. It's the tallest building in Australia. It's become world famous through this international design competition. On the day the project completes, when people see it in Melbourne's skyline, you obviously be standing there, knowing you're a part of it, and it's going to feel pretty awesome. But what do you hope people's reaction will be in Melbourne? What do you hope will be the reaction of citizens on the ground in Melbourne? I'm going to ask that to each of you, if that's okay, because I want to get each your perspective. So, Luke, first of all.
When completed, we want the buildings to evoke a sense of energy, life, sustainability, and intrigue, and to invite people to visit what will be the cultural heart of South Bank and the area and its surrounds. We hope people feel inspired and spurred on by its boundary-pushing exploration and display of the possibilities of a better world.
Absolutely, fantastic answer. Sander, how about you?
I would also think that at least people would recognize this as a building that is really fitting Melbourne on that location, that it kind of is a very natural fit in it, but it also kind of has that wow and amaze effect that asks people to go there and to enjoy what's going on there, because there will always be something interesting happening in, near, or up the towers. That's what will also be amazing about that stuff.
Michael, how about you? What will that day feel like?
Look, every city has a landmark. So when people think of Paris, they think of the Eiffel Tower. When people think of New York, they think of the Empire State Building. So for me, when looking at Melbourne skyline in the future, I really hope that people will think South Bank or Beulah. And it being a landmark of the city and just drawing people in. That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely. Julian, how about you?
Well, I hope the first reaction is just to keep your footing, because when you actually look up at tall towers, sometimes you can lose your balance. But yeah, apart from that, Melbourne's I'm biased, obviously, but I think it's a beautiful city. And I think I'd hope the reaction when looking at this tower is just the same. Wow, this is beautiful.
Absolutely. Shanak, how about you? I mean, other than it being an awesome Bluebeam case study.
Yeah. Well, I see for myself, I live on the outskirts of Melbourne, so I actually get to see Melbourne from a distance up in the hills, and I love my city. And like Julian, and also with what Mike was saying, there's always that landmarks, and I love the architecture of our city, that it's, this tower is not trying to fight everything else. It's part of everything else, and it draws you to it. So I'm actually really looking forward to seeing it and just being part of the city and expanding. So it's going to be great.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, just to say, acknowledge the chat. There's now lots of people putting their email addresses in. So if you need if you need help and advice, guys, we've ended up with a procurement session here, but let's see how you go. I think just from my perspective, I know I'm very much an outsider looking in, but I think buildings like this do so much to inspire people. They do so much to lift perspectives, to set a benchmark for what we can do in our cities. And I think we do a lot through the stuff we do at B1M about trying to inspire people around the world, whether they're young people looking to come into construction or architecture, or people who are in jobs they don't like, thinking about what their next career step could be. I think buildings like this do such a great job of showing what is possible, showing how we can shape our world, how we can shape our cities, how we can always improve the quality of developments that we do. So I think in that regard, it's already made a huge difference in that sense. It's one of those buildings that that render that's on our cover slide, the front render looking across the river that's become iconic already. I think most people in the architecture world already know that before it's even built. So I think that bodes pretty well for what the final project is going to look like. Guys, just want to say huge thanks to you to each of you for being here today. We hugely appreciate your time and support on this. To get this level of access has been awesome. I just want to wish you all the very best of luck in terms of getting this project over the line and completed, which is going to be awesome. If you've put in a question and we haven't answered it at all, because we are somewhat overwhelmed by questions, we will endeavour to get back to you on email. If you've sent in your email address, I can't guarantee you're going to get the job, but we'll see what happens. Thanks anyway. There's loads coming in now. I shouldn't have said nothing, but there we go. So yeah, thanks again to Luke. Thanks for your time. It's been great to have Beulah here. Thank you, Sander. Thank you, Julian, Michael, and Shanak as well. Big thanks to everyone at Bluebeam for sponsoring and making today's live event and the video possible. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in from all around the world. It's now almost 8 AM in London. So if you're tuning in from London, Europe, or the US, big shout out to you. Go and get yourself a cup of coffee. But yeah, no, huge thanks to everyone being here. We wish you the very best of luck with this project. We cannot wait to see it become a reality, and we're looking forward to getting over there when all this COVID stuff's behind us, filming some on the ground stuff and seeing this project come to life. So thanks again.
Thanks very much.